was put in an orphanage at a very early age. And I said, oh, what a blessing that was, because in the orphanage he got love and support and education. And Lee stayed with his mother and ended up under psychiatric care. So I knew the family well. I spent a lot of time with them, and then I interviewed. By the way, I went back to the Texas School Book Depository recently. They asked me to come back and do an oral history for them on video, which I did. And as I sat there in the building, I said, this is where I had a table and interviewed 123 witnesses at the Texas School Book Depository who witnessed what went on, the assassination. There's only one witness I didn't interview that was key. He was a construction worker, Howard Brennan, who was standing across from the depository building, and he watched the entire event take place and gave the FBI statement. And there was no question. Another interesting fact, not one of the witnesses I interviewed saw or heard anything from the railroad overpass or anywhere else. The only thing they saw and heard came from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Months and years later, people began to see things and hear things and do stories and get paid for stories about conspiracy theories. I don't believe any of it, but I say to you, I'm not trying to change anyone's opinion about it. My opinion is based on the facts I observed while they're investigating the case, and that's all. So I believe that he was the lone gunman, and I think it's been proven by history. So.
And the motive was because of, didn't he want to make it his wife?
Well, there's a lot of theories about why he killed the president, but one that my own theory was that the weekend before he killed Kennedy, he stayed in Dallas to take a driver's license test. Now, he was going to buy an old car. He didn't have a car, and his wife was divorced him. She was living out in Irving, and she had said that we don't have anywhere to get around, and she really criticized him for not having a good job and having a car to transfer her and the kid around. At that time they had, I think, two. I don't remember for sure, but anyway. So he wanted to get a car, but he had to have a driver's license before he could buy. He had to have a driver's license to buy a car. So he took the driver's license. If he's going to go kill it on that weekend, if he'd have known he was going to shoot the President of the United States, why would he waste his time going to, it's not easy to take that test, written and driver's test, that weekend. So it was my position that he was preparing to get Marina back. He got the driver's test. That Thursday, he asked one of the co-workers if I could ride out. He lived out near where Marina was staying. Can I ride out with you? I want to see my wife. That Thursday night, he went out, he went in to see her, and the promise that he was going to get a car and wanted her to come back. She refused to talk to him. She went in and locked herself in the bedroom, and he ended up going to bed. The next morning he got up, he put what money he had on the dresser and his keys, and he went out and got his rifle in the garage and took it down and shot the president the next day. Now, I think he shot Kennedy. By the way, Marina told me that he admired President Kennedy. We don't even know he was shooting Kennedy, but let's just assume that he was. He wanted to lash out at Marina for not taking him back and tell the world. He had a life of, he had never succeeded at a single thing in his life. I mean, you failed at a thing or two, he never succeeded at a thing or two. So here's a guy that was desperate for attention. And I just commented about all the shooters we have today. They're all young men who are desperate for attention and lashing out at the world. So anyway, I think that was the motive. I just don't feel like that on that weekend it ever occurred to him. And he actually, we didn't announce until Tuesday that the president was even coming by the Texas School Book Depository. So the weekend he took the driver's test, I don't think he had any idea of becoming the president.
And that's just your opinion.
Yeah.
Well, so after this, you decided you couldn't really work with Johnson, and we don't have to get into that, but you didn't really care for him. And you decided to go back to law school. You went back to law school, you finished, got your law degree, moved to Little Rock, and started practicing criminal law. And you got really involved with politics and politicians, and one of them being Wilbur Mills in Arkansas. And during this time, you know, you were just really dealing with a lot of just law enforcement and legal criminal cases, and really doing well with that, really getting involved in politics, you know, helping campaigns. You helped your friend Fred Smith launch Federal Express during this time too, just because of a lot of your contacts. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and just talk about
when I
him?
was in the Secret Service, it was natural. Now, I didn't know Mills or McClellan or anybody in politics except locally. And I did know Paulus, but when I was in the Secret Service, I got to know all of them. And Mills and McClellan and Fulbright especially, we seem to connect more than the others. And so I had those contacts, and then I was practicing law in Little Rock, and another lawyer called me and said, I've got a client I want you to meet that you might be able to help. So I went over to his house one Sunday, and this kid came, and he just returned from Vietnam, where he was in the Marines. He spent a tour in combat, and then he volunteered to go back for another tour as a flight observer, flying a small plane to observe the enemy. And his name, he was 27 years old, and his name was Frederick W. Smith. And he had an idea. He rolled out on the floor of this living room, and it was a cargo airline. So he said, I understand you got the contacts in Washington to help me get this started. And I don't know really what I thought about his idea, but I said, you got the money, I've got the time, I'll go to Washington and help you. And so he sent me to Washington. It was like 68, I guess, or 69. And I spent the next few years in Washington helping him launch Federal Express. There's some of the things about that I'm not willing to talk about, but mainly Mills and McClellan were instrumental in getting that through all the administrative red tape that it took to get FedEx started. So during that time, then Fred moved to Memphis. It's kind of an interesting story. I've got some Arkansas friends here that would appreciate this story. But so Mr. Mills said, look, I'll get federal money to match the city. If the city of Little Rock will agree to expand the airport for FedEx, then I'll get federal matching funds so we can completely redo the Little Rock Airport to accommodate Federal Express. So Frank Watson and I, the lawyer, by then he's my partner, we went to the city council and we presented the whole plan, and they voted no. And Fred Smith said, well, you're the one that's got to tell McClellan and Mills about it. Then when I told Mr. Mills that the city refused to accommodate FedEx, he said, well, you know what, I don't understand it. But it's their choice. They've got a right to do that. So you have my blessing to go anywhere with it. Fred had said, well, if they're not going to, now Fred was originally from Memphis. So he said, well, you know, Memphis did the same thing with Delta Airlines, and Delta went to Atlanta. So I think if we go to Memphis, they learn from that mistake, then they'll accommodate us. We went to Memphis, and they said, yes, we'll do whatever necessary. Mr. Mills went on to help the city of Memphis, and FedEx moved to Memphis. Fred said, I want you all to move to Memphis with me. And Frank, my partner, decided to do that. And I said, no, I'm going to stay in Arkansas. I just want to stay here and practice law. So, but in the meantime, I was in Washington all this time and got closer and closer to Mills and McClellan. And Mills became a mentor. He was, I don't know why. Again, throughout my life, there's always been people who helped me, which I never really understood why. But Mills was an important mentor in my life. He sent me the Rolling Stones.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. Is like right around that same time,
Yeah.
Wilbur Mills, because of that relationship, he was kind of a friend of a financial advisor that worked with the Stones. And the Stones were, during that time, banned from the United States for many reasons, and you can read about that in Keith Richards' book or my dad's book. But for many reasons during that time, they were kind of a threat to society. And Mills recommended you to the Stones. Talk about that meeting with Mick Jagger in New York and the legal counsels that were representing the Stones at the time and what they thought about you.
Well, there was Elliot Janeway was an economist in New York, and he was a friend of Mr. Mills. And he told Mills that he had a client, Mick Jagger, who had a problem, and they had this powerful New York. I love this part of the story because the Stones then hired this New York law firm of Yale and Harvard graduates. I call them the Yale pinstripes. And, you know, they're smarter than the rest of us. So they go down to Washington to go into the State Department demanding all these rights for the Rolling Stones, and they immediately got thrown out. And so then they wanted to do, so they hired this political law firm in Washington, one of the most powerful firms in Washington. Same result, they got thrown out too. So now they don't know what to do. So Bill said, well, maybe you ought to talk to this guy, Bill Carter. So I go to Washington to meet with Jagger, and he's got these lawyers, these Yale pinstripes. And so right away they start questioning, what makes you think you could do this and we couldn't do it? And I said, well, I don't know. I just do the best I can and see what happens. And they immediately accused me of going to bribe somebody or do something illegal. And I just got up and said, I won't repeat some of the things I said, but I said, I'm leaving. You're accusing me of illegal activity, and I've lived my life of honor, and I'm going to continue to do that, and I'm not going to listen to this. And I started walking out of the room, and Jagger reached up and grabbed me in the back of my coat and pulled me back and said, you know what, I'm going to hire you to represent us. And I think, I don't know if he felt sorry for me or he thought that maybe this hick from Little Rock could do some good. So now I'm representing the Rolling Stones,
and you went on to represent them for about 12 to 15 years, on and off, and you worked with them on their touring, and a lot of the things, the tactics that you learned in the Secret Service about detailing the cities and going in ahead of time, and you put that into practice for their tour, which a lot of tours still to this day do a little bit at the same time.
Well, they've been barred from the United States by the State Department because they were corrupting the American youth. And when I got to the State Department, they pulled out these files that were that thick and they had numbers. And I'm listening to them talk about the Rolling Stones. They're not the same people that I know. Now, I'm not going to tell you they're Sunday school teachers, but they weren't what I'm hearing from the State Department officials. So and this numbers kept getting to me. So anyway, and this was in the first meeting I had at the State Department in 1973. Our ties were about this wide and hair is long. And the guy that's in charge, I go to see him, and he's got a crew cut. Now, I hadn't seen a crew cut for 10 years or longer. I mean, crew cuts were in the 50s or 40s and 50s. And this guy's got a crew cut. And then his tie is about 2 inches. So I thought, oh my God, this guy is so conservative. So that's who I got to win over. But so the difference between me and the Yale blue suits, I said, you know what? I used to work down the street here. And he said, really? where? I said, at the White House with Kennedy. He said, oh my gosh, tell me about Kennedy. So we started talking about me and being in the Secret Service, and we became pals. Not that it was easy to get him to change his mind, but at least that opened the door. And later, I remember what you're asking me, because I'll go. A year later, I'm in a stalemate with the State Department. So I remember these numbers they were talking about, and the devil, the Rolling Stones represent the devil himself. And Jagger is a really smart guy and a good businessman. So I'm thinking, I need to bring Jagger to the State Department and show him that this is Mick Jagger, not number so-and-so who's the representative of the devil. So anyway, I called Jagger, and he said, yeah, I'll fly down to Washington, meet you down there. He put on a suit and tie, and we walk into the lobby of the State Department. If you've ever been there, it's a big building, and way too many people work there out of my head. But anyway, we go into the lobby, and security comes out, and people start coming off the elevators, out of offices, and swarmed us. And it was like a riot. And the security came and said, listen, we can't have this. I mean, and we don't have enough people here to take care of this. I said, they just want to meet Mick Jagger. There's not any danger here. And he said, this has totally disrupted our building. What am I going to do? So I said, why don't we just let us go under our meeting? Well, every time we got off the elevator, it was the same thing. Every girl that worked in that building had to meet Mick Jagger. And so now they don't know what to do. Here's the guy that they think is so bad and everything, but all their employees want to meet and have a picture made with him. So we had the meeting, and it turned out Mick became friends with one of the senior officers of the State Department, and talked about history of foreign affairs, and he's really a smart guy. And the guy told me later, he said, Moore, you're Mick Jagger's a smart guy. So I think that meeting we had won the State Department officials over, and ultimately they made the decision. And the decision they made was, we'll grant them the right to tour, but you have to tour with them. You've got to protect the American youth. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not sure about this. So anyway, they wanted a written plan on how to handle the Rolling Stones tour in the United States. I had an old Secret Service advance. I actually did several for Kennedy and more for Johnson, where we had to do a security advance on his trip, and you had to write that up and submit it to the White House and to the head of the Secret Service. So I just took one of those plans and just changed the name from President to the Rolling Stones, and I'd go to the city before they'd tour. We'd go to the city, meet with the mayor, the chief of police, and we'd plan security for their trip and submit it to the State Department. Fine, but you've got to tour with them. So for the next 3 tours, I did all the tours of the Rolling Stones. That's another story.
Yeah, there's some great stories. I mean, the very first chapter of Keith's autobiography about his life is about, the very first chapter is about getting arrested in Fordyce, Arkansas. But in that chapter too, he describes you to a T. Now I don't know that the Fordyce is a long story, so I don't know that we have the time to do that. Y'all can ask about that when we get to
let me remember that. But
yeah,
a couple of years ago, where is Glenna Sigsbee's here somewhere? Yeah, you told a friend or something of the judges in Arkansas. I got a call from the Judges Association, or it is all the judges in Arkansas, and they wanted to invite me to come to Hot Springs to their annual meeting and speak to them. And I was very flattered because I'm a dumb kid from Rector. I was never a very smart lawyer. I knew how to make deals, but I didn't see myself as, I was so honored about what I'm saying that they wanted to, here's the judges, all the judges in Arkansas want to hear from me. So anyway, I did go down and speak to them. And the one thing they wanted to know about was Fordyce.
In the book though, Keith's book, it's like a perfect account of the whole thing.
Well, he exaggerated a few things, but
yeah.
so Fordyce, I was touring with the Stones in 1975. I don't know how far we were into the tour. We got to Memphis, and it was a Friday night, I think, at the Liberty Bowl, and then we were off on Saturday. And so Friday, actually before the show, Friday, Keith came to me and said, "You always talk about Arkansas. We've got a date Sunday in Dallas. I think I'm going to rent a car and drive through Arkansas." And I said, "Oh, no, you're not, Keith." And this, by the way, the Arkansas legislature had introduced a bill banning rock and roll during this time. And as ridiculous as that might sound, I've got a copy of it in my office at home. But so the environment in Arkansas was not really good for Keith Richards. And so he said, "Okay, I won't do it." So Saturday, Judge Fairley over in West Memphis, a law school mate, called me and said, "Come over and we'll barbecue. You got a day off." Because we weren't flying out to Dallas till Sunday morning for the show there. So I go over to West Memphis, and Lindsay and I are out in his patio barbecuing, and I get a phone call that Keith's in jail in Fordyce, Arkansas. Now, of all places, Fordyce. And by the way, I knew I'd been on the Law Enforcement Training Academy Commission. Rockefeller appointed me there. I knew every law enforcement officer in Arkansas. I knew every sheriff. So I knew exactly what I was dealing with Fordyce. It was the most conservative area of the state. And so immediately I say to Judge Fairley, "I got to get out the airport, charter a plane, and get to Fordyce, and I need you to go with me because I'm likely to get arrested myself. I'm going to go down and get Keith out of jail." But anyway, I made a couple of quick phone calls to the state police, and said, "Don't do anything till I get there." And they honored that. So we had a flight down there. Now, if you've read that story, it's pretty ridiculous because the judge had been playing, and I have to be careful here, there's some press here. The judge had been playing golf. Now, there's nothing wrong with most of you who play golf. You may have a cocktail or two. Saturday afternoon, you're not working, you're playing golf and having a few drinks. Well, the judge had several. And when he got there, now the chief of police is mad because the state police are listening to me, and the chief he's got the Rolling Stones in his jail, and man, the press is calling from London, from all over the world. And by the way, by the time I got there at 5 o'clock, the TV station from Dallas and Channel 7 in Little Rock were set up already. Kids were coming from all over the South. It hit the radio, and the state police had put up roadblocks because thousands of kids would come. They're going to come and get Keith out of jail. And, so that's what I arrived and I'm confronted with. So anyway, we got there. We're having a hearing, and I'm not going to go into all of it, but Keith, I describe it in my book. But when Keith wrote his book, and he brought his co-author to Nashville to see me. He called me one night and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, nothing." He said, "Well, I'm going to come down and need to see you because my mind's a little foggy about some things." Really? So he flew down the next morning, and I'll throw in a few little tidbits here, but when we were unloading his baggage out the airport, he smoked 6 cigarettes in a matter of maybe 20 minutes. When he gets up in the morning, he smokes a cigarette, and he smokes a cigarette all day long, and he has a shot of whiskey for breakfast. So I've never known him to be sick. the only time he ever missed a date, he fell out of a coconut tree in Asia. But he's never had the flu. He's never been sick of any kind. And I'm not recommending his lifestyle for that purpose. But anyway, so...
well, I mean, I think that is such an interesting story. And then recently, the footage was released, and you know, it's both my sister and I have that on Facebook.
He talked about all the drugs. There wasn't any drugs to speak of. One of the guys with him had some cocaine in his briefcase, and that was the charge. But the briefcase search was illegal. And I told the judge, and the prosecuting attorney was just out of law school. His Tom, he became a judge down there. Marlowe. What? Well, I can't remember his name, but anyway, he has went on to become a judge, but he was just out of law school, so he hadn't been tainted, influenced by anybody, and so he was going to follow the law. Well, the law was clear. They had no justification, no probable cause to open that briefcase. That didn't belong to Keith, but they opened it and found no cocaine, so they filed charges against that guy. But I immediately told the judge it was an illegal search. And the judge was agreeing with me, and that was clearly what the law was. And the chief of police then decided the judge was drunk. And he couldn't make a decision. And the only way he could stop this was to arrest the judge for public drunk. So he attempts to do that, and it became a little scuffle there in the courtroom. In the meantime, Frank Wynn, who was the prosecuting attorney, I knew well. I called Frank and I said, "You need to get over here because we've got a serious problem." Well, he came and he ordered the chief of police to leave Tom Wynn alone, and he went back on the bench then and made a decision that it was a legal search, and we posted a bond. And I called my partner in Little Rock, Kathy Woods, and I said, "Get a King Air and get it down to the airport in Fordyce and have it waiting on the airport with a bottle of Jack Daniels." So when we get ready, we'll board that plane head to Dallas. So about 12:30 that night, now the state police still got a roadblock. There's a riot. And that actually, the film that was released from Channel 7.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, that's been released, and that's
the
on your
state
website.
police put us in a car and had a police escort to get us from the courthouse to the airport. There was kids everywhere. Fordyce is about 5,000. I think there was 15,000 kids in Fordyce. So it was quite a riotous affair. And so when we boarded the plane, we did have Jack Daniels.
Yeah, and I know that, and I'll just kind of speak of this because, you know, you went on to work with him for, like I said, 15 years, and you ended up being closer to Keith towards the end and helped him. And we don't have to really get into this, but because of that Fordyce incident and all that riot and what it showed the Rolling Stones could create and the love for them and the fans, that when Keith got arrested in Canada for drug possession, and a pretty hefty one for heroin, he could have been kept there for life. You presented to them that if they didn't get him out of jail, one, he would die because of his addiction, or that would create such a riot that, you know, if he died, you know, and you presented what was going to be kind of a riot type event, that they ended up giving you the access to get him out, get him safe, get him to rehab, and you really basically saved his life.
Well,
I mean, that's the story.
I'll go back. In the beginning of that story, I knew they were going to Toronto to record at the El Macombo, a live album. And their financial advisor called me and said, "We're not going to need you on this trip because there's not going to be any big dates, events, or anything." So I said, "Fine, you don't want to pay me, then I won't come up." So I was in LA flying back to Little Rock. And the captain came to my seat and said, "I got to tell you, I got an emergency call for you." And when we landed in Dallas, you've got to call home immediately. It's not a family emergency, it's a business matter. So when we land at Dallas, please call your home. I called my home and said, you need to call Peter Rhodes, his phone's manager. Maybe he's been arrested in Toronto. So.